The autumn wind rattled the barn doors as Marcus Chun carried another bucket of water across the dusty floor. He was 12 years old and spending another lonely evening doing chores on his grandmother's Montana ranch. His parents worked overseas, so the ranch had become his home, a home with more cattle than people. That was when he heard it, a low, rattling breath coming from the old equipment shed in the back corner. Marcus froze. They didn't keep animals back there. His heart pounded as he grabbed a flashlight and moved closer. What he found made him drop the bucket. A creature lay curled between two rusted tractors, and it looked like something from his fantasy books. Scales covered its body, shifting between deep blue and purple in the flashlight beam. Wings, actual wings, lay folded against its sides, torn and bleeding. Its head was long and elegant, with eyes that reflected his light like polished gold coins. Those eyes watched him with unmistakable intelligence. Marcus should have run, should have called his grandmother, but something in those eyes stopped him. The creature was hurt, scared, and clearly didn't want to harm him. It made a soft chirping sound, almost questioning. "It's okay," Marcus whispered, though he had no idea if it understood. "I won't hurt you." Over the next hour, moving slowly and carefully, Marcus brought supplies. Clean rags, water, the antiseptic spray they use on injured cattle. The creature watched his every move but allowed him to clean the worst wounds on its wings. Up close, Marcus saw strange symbols glowing faintly along its scales, not decorations, but something alive, like bioluminescent patterns on deep-sea fish. "I'm going to call you Starfire," Marcus said softly, "because of those lights. Is that okay?" The creature, Starfire, tilted her head. Then, deliberately, she lowered her snout and gently touched Marcus's hand. He could have sworn she understood. That night began the strangest friendship of Marcus's life. He snuck food to Starfire, hid her presents from his grandmother, and spent every free moment in the barn. Communication was nearly impossible at first. Starfire couldn't make human sounds, and Marcus certainly couldn't make her chirping, whistling language. But she watched everything he did with intense focus. One evening, 2 weeks after finding her, Marcus sat reading a children's book while Starfire rested. He noticed her eyes weren't on him. They were on the pages. She leaned closer, studying the pictures and words. "Can you see these?" Marcus asked, pointing at the letters. "These are words. They mean things." Starfire made an excited clicking sound. She reached out with one clawed finger and tapped the book. Marcus's heart raced with sudden understanding. "You want to learn? You want to learn to read." The dragon's eyes blazed brighter. So began their lessons. Marcus started simple. Picture books meant for toddlers. He would point an apple in a picture, say apple, then show her the written word. Starfire proved to be an incredible student. Within days, she recognized basic words. Within weeks, she understood simple sentences. Marcus brought notebooks and thick markers. Starfire's claws weren't made for writing, but she learned to grip the markers awkwardly and form letters. Her first written word was shaky and took 10 minutes of careful effort. "Sky." "Yes." Marcus laughed. "Sky. That's perfect." They developed a routine. Marcus would read aloud, and Starfire would follow along, her claw tracing beneath the words. Sometimes she would struggle with a word, and Marcus would sound out slowly. Other times, she would surprise him by figuring out meaning from context. The breakthrough came 6 weeks after they met. Marcus was reading a simple story about friendship when Starfire suddenly grabbed the marker. Her claw moved across the paper slowly, carefully forming letters. "Friend," she wrote, then tapped Marcus's chest and her own. Marcus felt tears in his eyes. Yes, friends. We're friends. But their time was running short. Marcus had noticed a strange wreckage half buried in the north pasture. Starfire's ship, he realized. And over the past few days, it had started humming with energy. Lights flickered across its hull. It was repairing itself. The morning it finished, Starfire stood at the barn door, wings flexing experimentally. They had healed. She looked at Marcus with those golden eyes, and he knew she had to leave. "I'll miss you," he whispered. Starfire picked up the notebook one last time. Her claw moved slowly, forming words with great care. Friend, thank you, remember, Marcus. Then she spread her wings and launched into the sky. Marcus watched until she was just a star among stars, wondering if he would ever see his student again. 5 years had passed like a slow river through Marcus's life. He was 17 now, taller and quieter than most boys his age. His grandmother had died 2 years ago, and he lived alone on the ranch, finishing high school online while managing the property. Most days, he convinced himself that Starfire had been some kind of fever dream, a lonely kid's imagination running wild. But he still kept the notebooks, still remembered those golden eyes. It was a Tuesday morning in spring when the sky screamed. Marcus was feeding the cattle when he heard the sound, like metal tearing through air. Something bright and small streaked across the blue sky and crashed into the far pasture with a ground-shaking thud. His first thought was meteor. His second thought was Starfire's ship. Marcus ran faster than he had ever run before, jumping fences and stumbling through tall grass until he reached the impact site. A metallic cylinder, about the size of a coffee can, sat steaming in a small crater. Strange symbols glowed along its surface, symbols that looked familiar. Marcus's hands shook as he picked it up. It was warm and surprisingly light. A seam appeared along its side, and it opened with a soft hiss. Inside was a roll of material that felt like silk but shimmered like liquid metal. Marcus carefully unrolled it, and his breath caught in his throat. Words. English words written in flowing script that he recognized immediately. The same careful handwriting Starfire had used in their notebooks. Dear Marcus, the letter began, and he had to sit down in the grass. The letter told him everything. Starfire had made it home to her world, a place she called Thraxa, which orbited a binary star system 40 light-years from Earth. The journey had taken months, even with faster-than-light travel. She described her people, the Thrax, who communicated through something like telepathy, sharing thoughts and feelings directly from mind to mind. But I could not share what you gave me, she had written. Reading is different from thought-sharing. When I read your books, the words belonged to me alone. Private thoughts, personal ideas. My people do not understand this concept. They think I am strange now. Marcus read on, his eyes burning. Starfire described returning home changed. She had tried to explain reading to her family, to the scholars of her people, but they could not grasp why anyone would want to write things down when thoughts could flow freely between minds. They say writing is primitive. The letter continued. They say it is slow and unnecessary. But Marcus, they are wrong. When I read, I can think thoughts that are only mine. I can hold ideas carefully and examine them from every side. Telepathy is like a river rushing past. Beautiful but gone in a moment. Reading is like catching water in your hands and studying each drop. The letter went on for pages. Starfire described the wonders of her journey home, a nebula that looked like frozen fire, a planet made entirely of crystal, a space station where 100 different species traded goods and stories. She wrote about missing Earth, missing the quiet barn, missing the patient boy who had pointed at pictures and taught her that marks on paper could hold meaning. I have questions, she wrote near the end. So many questions. What book should I read next? What is happening in your life? Do you remember teaching me the word, sky? I look at alien skies now, and I think that word every time. Sky, sky, sky. Each one different. Each one beautiful. I can name them now, thanks to you. The letter included coordinates and instructions. Starfire had arranged a system using automated drones that travel between her space routes and Earth. If Marcus wrote back and placed his letter in the cylinder at these exact coordinates on the first Monday of each month, the drones would collect it and carry it to the vast dark to wherever Starfire's ship was traveling. Marcus sat in the grass for an hour, reading and rereading the letter. His lonely years suddenly felt different, not empty, but full of waiting, full of preparation for this moment. That evening, he sat at his grandmother's old desk and began writing. His hand cramped from how much he had to say. He told Starfire about his life, about his grandmother's death, about how he had started studying languages because of her. He recommended more books, novels about space exploration, poetry about loneliness and connection. Histories of how humans learn to write. You changed my life too, he wrote. Before you, I was just a lonely kid on a ranch. Now I know that teaching matters, that words matter, that friendship can cross 40 light years and still feel real. On the first Monday of the month, Marcus hiked to the coordinates and placed his letter in the cylinder. It sealed itself and shot into the sky with that same tearing sound. He walked home smiling, knowing that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a dragon was waiting to read his words. Marcus was 23 now, sitting in a cramped university library surrounded by books about language and alien communication. He had just finished his undergraduate degree in linguistics and was starting graduate work in a brand new field called xenolinguistics, the study of how humans might communicate with alien species. His professors had no idea he had been doing exactly that for 6 years. The letters came regularly now, one every month like clockwork. Marcus had a special drawer at his apartment filled with shimmering metallic pages, each one covered in Starfire's increasingly elegant handwriting. He knew her life better than he knew most humans. She had described her world's 3 moons, the way Thrax cities grew like crystals from mountainsides, and how her people could share emotions as easily as humans shared words. But her most recent letter was different, exciting and frightening at the same time. Marcus, something incredible is happening, she had written. I started teaching other Thrax to read. At first, only a few were curious, young ones mostly, who thought it was an interesting oddity. But then something changed. They discovered what I discovered. Privacy, individual thought, the ability to hold an idea and examine it slowly, carefully, without it dissolving into shared consciousness. Marcus had smiled reading that part, but then the letter grew more serious. We are creating libraries now. Real libraries with books and scrolls and data tablets. Thrax are writing down their own thoughts, personal philosophies, private feelings, individual experiences. We have invented Thrax literature, Marcus, poetry written by a single mind for other single minds to discover. It is revolutionary. Over the next several letters, Starfire described his revolution in detail. Young Thrax were learning to express themselves in writing, creating stories and essays that existed outside the telepathic collective. They were translating human books into Thrax-written language, which they had to invent as they went. They were building schools where writing was taught alongside traditional telepathy. But not everyone is happy, one letter warned. The elders say we are losing our way. They say writing encourages dangerous individualism. They say it weakens our telepathic bonds. Some have called me a corrupter of culture. They say I brought back a human disease. Marcus felt his stomach tighten as he read. He wrote back immediately, asking if she was safe, if she needed anything. Her response came faster than usual. I am safer now, but there is tension. Some Thrax burned a collection of early manuscripts last week. They said the writings were poison to our collective harmony. Marcus, they burned books. I never understood what that meant until I saw it. All those thoughts, those careful ideas, turned to ash. Marcus knew exactly what to send her. He spent a week carefully selecting and scanning books about human history, about the Library of Alexandria, about book burnings throughout history, about people who had fought to preserve knowledge against those who wanted to destroy it. He sent her writings about peaceful resistance, about civil disobedience, about how humans had protected ideas even when it was dangerous. He also sent her the works of philosophers who wrote about freedom of thought, about the importance of individual voice, about why diverse perspectives made society stronger rather than weaker. Starfire's next letter arrived 2 months later, and Marcus could feel the exhaustion in her words even through the page. They have exiled me from the capital, she wrote. The Council of Elders declared that I was spreading division among our people. They gave me a choice, stop teaching reading and writing or leave. I chose to leave. Several hundred young Thrax chose to leave with me. Marcus's hands trembled as he read on. We have established a sanctuary on one of our outer moons. We call it the Scholarium. It is small and cold and far from home, but it is ours. We have brought our books, our writings, our ideas. More Thrax arrive every week, Marcus. They are leaving comfortable lives to come here and learn, to read, to write, to think their own thoughts. The letter continued with descriptions of their new home, but Marcus noticed something new in Starfire's writing, a weariness mixed with determination. She was no longer just a student or his friend. She had become a leader, a revolutionary, someone fighting for something bigger than herself. Near the end, Starfire asked something she had never asked before. Marcus, teach me how humans fight for ideas without violence. Send me your stories of peaceful resistance. We have no weapons here, only words. But words are what started this. So perhaps words can protect it too. How do you defend a library when others want to burn it? How do you protect the right to read? Marcus stared at that question for a long time. Then he began writing the longest letter he had ever written, filling page after page with everything he knew about nonviolent movements, about the power of education, about how ideas could be stronger than armies when people were willing to stand behind them. He sent the letter off and waited, hoping his words would be enough to help his friend across the stars. Marcus was 28 when two serious-looking people in dark suits appeared at his apartment door. He was a doctoral candidate now, teaching undergraduate classes, while finishing his research on cross-species communication patterns. The visitors showed him credentials that identified them as representatives of the United Earth Coalition, the organization managing humanity's first official contact with alien civilizations. Dr. Chun, the woman said, though Marcus had not yet finished his doctorate, we need to talk about your correspondence with the Thrax exile known as Starfire. Marcus felt his blood run cold. He had always wondered if anyone knew about the letters. For 15 years, he had kept them secret, thinking people would call him crazy or try to take them away. How did you? He started. The Galactic Coalition has been monitoring Earth's communication for years, the man explained. We noticed a drone traffic to your coordinates. When we investigated, we discovered something remarkable. You have been conducting successful xenolinguistic exchange with a species that communicates primarily through telepathy. Do you understand how significant that is? They sat in his small living room, and Marcus learned things that made his head spin. Earth was about to join the Galactic Coalition officially. Humanity's first diplomatic vessel was being prepared for deep space travel. And Starfire's exile community, her Scholarium, had become something much bigger than Marcus had realized. The written works coming from the Scholarium are spreading across multiple species, the woman explained. Telepathic civilizations, hive mind collectives, species that communicate through color changes or pheromones. They're all discovering written language through Thrax translations. Your friend is not just teaching her own people to read. She is changing how dozens of species think about individual expression. Some call her a dangerous radical, the man added. Others call her a prophet. The coalition is divided on whether the Scholarium represents cultural evolution or cultural contamination. Marcus felt a surge of protective anger. Starfire is not dangerous. She just wants people to have the choice to read and write. We agree, the woman said, which is why we want you on the diplomatic mission. Earth is sending a gift to the coalition, a comprehensive library of human literature translated into multiple alien languages. Teams that Starfire helped train remotely have been working on these translations for 2 years. We want you to personally deliver this library to the Scholarium. Marcus could barely breathe. You want to go to space? To see Starfire? The journey will take 8 months, even with faster-than-light travel, the man said. But yes, we believe your presence would demonstrate Earth support for the Scholarium's mission. And frankly, Dr. Chun, you're the only human who has successfully taught a telepathic species to read. That makes you uniquely qualified. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the docking bay of humanity's first deep space vessel, the Aurora. His cabin was small but comfortable, and he had brought only a few personal items. The most important was a locked case containing every letter Starfire had ever sent him, hundreds of them now, chronicling 15 years of friendship and revolution. The journey was long and often lonely. The Aurora carried a crew of 30 humans and a handful of alien advisors helping navigate coalition space. Marcus spent his time reading Starfire's letters again, watching her written voice evolve from simple sentences to complex philosophical arguments to beautiful poetry. One letter from 5 years ago struck him particularly hard on this reading. Starfire had written, "Sometimes I think about that barn on your ranch, Marcus. How small it was. How quiet. Just a boy and a wounded dragon learning to share ideas. I did not know then that you were teaching me how to change worlds. Did you know? Did you understand what you were giving me? Marcus had never thought of it that way. He had just been a lonely kid who wanted to help an injured creature. But maybe that was how all important things started. Small, quiet, without anyone realizing the weight of the moment. 6 months into the journey, the Aurora's captain called Marcus to the observation deck. Through the massive viewport, Marcus saw something that took his breath away. A small moon orbiting a gas giant, its surface dotted with crystalline structures that caught and reflected light like diamonds. The Scholarium. "We will arrive in 2 days," the captain said. "I thought you would want to see it from a distance first." Marcus pressed his hand against the viewport, staring at the moon that had become a sanctuary for ideas, a fortress built from words. Somewhere down there, Starfire was waiting, his student, his teacher, his friend across the impossible dark. "I am ready," Marcus whispered, though his heart was pounding. After 15 years of letters, he would finally see her again. He would finally see what their friendship had built. The landing shuttle touched down on the Scholarium's main platform, and Marcus felt his legs shake as he stood. 30 years had passed since a 12-year-old boy had found a wounded dragon in a barn. He was 42 now, with gray starting to show in his hair. Would Starfire even remember him the same way? The airlock opened and Marcus stepped onto alien soil for the first time in his life. The moon's atmosphere was thin but breathable, and the sky was a strange purple color. Crystalline buildings rose around him like frozen music, and Thrax of all ages moved between them, many carrying books or data tablets. Then he saw her. Starfire stood at the base of the landing platform, and Marcus's breath caught. She was older, too. Her scales had faded from deep blue to silver, and scars marked her wings from the years of exile. But her eyes still reflected light, like polished gold. And when she saw him, those eyes blazed with recognition. She did something Thrax rarely did. She tried to speak with her voice instead of telepathy, forcing sounds through a throat not designed for human language. "Cuz," she managed, the word rough but unmistakable. Marcus ran down the platform steps and stopped just in front of her, tears streaming down his face. "Starfire, I am here. I am really here." She lowered her head and gently pressed her forehead to his, the same gesture of friendship she had made in that barn so long ago. Marcus felt something brush his mind, not words exactly, but feelings. Joy, gratitude, welcome home. Over the next days, Starfire showed him everything. The Scholarium had grown far beyond what Marcus had imagined from her letters. Crystal spires housed millions of texts from dozens of species. Thrax students sat in quiet study rooms, their claws carefully forming letters on practice tablets. Multilingual archives preserved thoughts and ideas that would have dissolved in the flow of telepathy. "Look at this," Starfire wrote on a tablet, her claws now moving with practiced grace. She led him to a massive chamber where young Thrax were reading aloud to each other, practicing pronunciation, sharing stories, discussing ideas. "They are learning what you taught me. That thoughts can be examined, questioned, refined, not just felt and forgotten." But what made Marcus weep was the Chun collection. An entire wing of the main library was dedicated to books he had recommended over 30 years of letters. Each volume was displayed with notes in Starfire's handwriting explaining why it mattered, what it taught her, how it changed her thinking. His letters to her were preserved in crystal cases with a label that read, "Dialogues Across the Dark," the correspondence that founded the Scholarium. "I never thought," Marcus started, but could not finish. Starfire wrote quickly, "You gave a wounded alien the greatest gift, not just reading, the choice to think alone, to have private thoughts, to be an individual inside a collective. Now thousands have that choice because you gave it to me." But their reunion was interrupted 3 days later. A coalition vessel arrived carrying representatives from the Thrax home government and several other telepathic species. They demanded a meeting with Starfire and the human ambassador. Marcus stood beside Starfire in the Scholarium's council chamber as the accusations flew. The Thrax elder spoke through a translator device. Her telepathic thoughts converted to spoken words. You have corrupted our young with this obsession over individual thought, the elder said. Writing weakens our telepathic bonds. It teaches Thrax to hide from each other, to keep secrets, to value themselves over the collective. This place must be closed. Other species agreed. A representative from a hive mind civilization called the Scholarium cultural contamination. Another said written language was a step backward for telepathic species. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but Starfire placed a wing gently on his shoulder. She picked up a tablet and began writing. When she finished, she handed it to the translator device and had it read her words aloud. I was taught to read by a child who asked for nothing in return. The device read in Starfire's voice. He did not force me. He did not corrupt me. He offered me a choice. That is what the Scholarium offers. Choice. We do not tell Thrax to abandon telepathy. We tell them they can have both. Individual thought and collective consciousness. Private reflection and shared emotion. Writing does not destroy our culture. It adds to it. The chamber fell silent as the device continued reading Starfire's carefully crafted argument. She spoke about the value of diverse perspectives, about how some thoughts needed time and solitude to form properly, about how written history prevented the past from being forgotten or rewritten by collective memory. Telepathy is beautiful, her words concluded, but so is the quiet voice of one person speaking to another across time and space. So is the private thought that takes months to form. So is a letter that says, I was here, I thought this, I mattered. You can burn this library, but you cannot burn the idea it represents. Thousands of Thrax now know they have the right to their own thoughts. That is not corruption. That is freedom. The coalition debated for hours, but eventually reached a decision. The Scholarium will be granted protected status as a cultural sanctuary. Any Thrax who wished to learn reading and writing could come freely. The library would stand. That evening, Marcus and Starfire sat together on a balcony overlooking the crystalline buildings, watching the gas giant rise over the horizon. Will you stay? Starfire wrote on her tablet. We need teachers. We need someone who understands both humans and Thrax. Marcus thought about Earth, about his small apartment in his university office. Then he thought about this moon full of students learning that their individual voices mattered. There was no choice, really. I will stay, he said, for as long as you need me. Starfire scales glowed with bioluminescent joy. She wrote one more message. Not student and teacher anymore. Friends. Always friends. Marcus smiled, remembering a 12-year-old boy and a wounded dragon in a barn, neither knowing they were starting a revolution. Always friends, he agreed. Years later, when Marcus was old and gray, he received one final letter. Starfire was dying, her telepathic essence preparing to return to the collective consciousness that all Thrax shared in death. But she had written a memoir, thousands of pages documenting her individual life, her unique perspective, her personal journey. The book was titled The Boy Who Gave Me Words, and its final line made Marcus cry. Thank you for teaching me that some things must be written to be truly remembered. You will be remembered, Marcus Chun. I have made certain of it. Marcus held that letter for a long time, understanding the gift they had given each other. She had taught him that teaching mattered. He had taught her that learning could change worlds. And in a library on a distant moon, their story would be read for generations to come. Proof that friendship could cross any distance, and that sometimes the smallest act of kindness could echo across the stars.